so let's see. Melissa, I think you may need to go all the way up to the chat. You may be able to see it, but Pat just did repost it.
You don't necessarily need it to pay attention, go through it today for the session, but I wanted you to have it instead of me having to share slides. It gave you a place, with some of the information as well as the slides.
And that's because he's just an awesome facilitator.
I don't know about that. We'll see how this one goes.
All right, so Elizabeth can hear us now, yay. All right, and looks like we've got about a dozen people in, so we're gonna be respectful of your time because you guys were here on time and we're gonna get started. This is being recorded, so after the session, sometime this evening or tomorrow, I will make sure to get this out to everyone. And so without further ado, we're going to get started here. So today we have with us Pat Michaels of Great Circle Learning, and he's going to be talking to us about how to make amazing facilitator guides. And I want to go through just a little bit of housekeeping, you know how we always do. So we're using Zoom today. I think thanks to COVID, we are all probably close to having PhDs in how to use any kind of virtual meeting platform. But in case you didn't know, there are buttons that you can use to tell us if we're going too fast. I'm a New Yorker, so I talk fast. Sorry about that. And tell us if you want us to go slower. If you anything is good, you can click use yes or no. Use those buttons. I am going to be monitoring that for Pat, as well as the chat. You can always ask your questions in the chat feature, and I will then help Pat with that as he's facilitating. So here is a little bit about us for those of you that are not familiar with who the current board is. So here we are. We have Chief of Awesomeness, Alex Salas, who's current president. Zizu Aku is going to be your president next year. He's our president-elect. And then Lisa Anzoldi is VP of COM, and she's the one that sends out all the wonderful messages that tell you about all the things that we're doing. And then I call this the President Trifecta because Kathy, Christina, and I have all held the president role and have come back. Don't know what's up with that. You know, probably something wrong with us mentally, probably some pills can cure. But we love ATD Central Florida, and so we're still giving back. Kathy is now VP of Membership, Christina Finance, and I'm in past president role and helping with programs. So this is us, and we love serving you. Everything we do, we tailor it to the ATD capability model. And for those of you that aren't keeping up, it has now changed from the previous model to this new model, and there is a new certification. Definitely visit our website to become more familiar with that, or become familiar, or go to the ATD website to find out more about certification. And today, Pat's talk will actually touch on all three areas of the capability model. On the building personal capability, there's the lifelong learning and managing a project, developing professional capability. This is related to instructional design and how you train and facilitate, as well as technology application, because he does represent an organization, Great Circle Learning, that has a product that is really very cool, that helps you create these great guides. And then also on the impacting organizational capability, it touches on performance improvement. Now, Pat, his bio reads that at a young age, he realized that successes and failures are often determined in the trenches. And boy, isn't that true today, right? Everything that we're going through, I think this new generation is definitely going to be very superior. We're going to see that, 10, 15 years from now. He has crafted a career in talent development and management. He holds a degree in secondary education from Clemson University, and he's learned from his experience that executing the details is essential. That's a mouthful, and it's so true. He has successfully developed, implemented, and evaluated training and management programs in the hospitality and financial sectors for the last 20 years. He realizes the importance of high-level, big-picture ideas and concepts, and also understands that the grinders are essential to complete the work needed to achieve goals. He finds his satisfaction in training, managing, and coaching those who get the job done. He provided a quote, as Mark Twain once said, "Thunder is impressive, but it is the lightning that does the work." And I can tell you that there's a lot of lightning in Pat. He is definitely an amazing professional. I am actually a user of the Great Circle Learning product. And I can tell you that I am better now at using it through his personal coaching sessions that he's had with me to learn how to use the product. So without further ado, I will let Pat take the stage.
Right. Thank you, Rosa.
Thank you, Pat.
All right, so I'm going to try to share my screen, and hopefully this goes well. Let's see, I think that should. All right, can you guys now see my awesome PowerPoint cover page?
Yes, sir.
All right, so having your bio read while you're on a session, it's quite humbling, and I really need to work on that, so I appreciate it. But as Rosa said, my name's Pat Michaels. I'm the Director of Business Development with Great Circle Learning. We're actually a small family business we're based out of Florida. I'm, however, out of our satellite office in just south of Boston. So if you hear any of my 5 little interns running around, I do apologize, but I'll report them to HR if they make a lot of noise. But my whole thing today, what I really like to do, and I love to help people get better at what they do. And what I want today is for you to come away with some knowledge, some tips, maybe some tricks where you can start crafting better facilitator guides. I was telling Rosa earlier that I really wish there was more time, because today we're really going to be talking concepts. And at the end, I'm going to give you all my contact information. So if you ever want to just set up a session and we can talk, go over like actual hands-on types, how to do this within different programs, I'm happy to do that. And it looks like hopefully I'll be able to do another session with ATD Central Florida going over maybe how to build stuff within Word itself. But that's kind of, the goal for today. So really, high level learning objectives. We're going to be looking at some of what I consider the critical components of a facilitator guide for both face-to-face learning as well as virtual. We're going to go over some different strategies to employ, and then also talk about some tips and tricks, or tips and techniques to help craft those guides for you. And for those who haven't, in the group chat, I have downloaded, or I've put in a copy of the handout, a participant book. You don't need it to go through the session for today, but if you want to reference it, it has all the slides. It'll have the information in place for you to capture notes as well. But let's move on. All right, so normally this is where I'd ask in a session, if you guys have any questions, let's start off with those. Don't be shy to ask them. Obviously in these virtual environments, generally it's through chat, but I'm okay if everyone's unmuted and you guys want to speak up. That doesn't bother me whatsoever. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I generally try to stay away from the idea that there's no dumb question, because we all know that's not true, especially if you have teenage boys in the house. But in this environment, truly ask away. There really aren't any dumb questions when it comes to this type of stuff. So when I look at facilitator guides, the first place I always want to start with is, why do we need a facilitator guide? What is it going to be doing? And I really break it down to 4 things. One is what I would call the meat and potatoes. It's the actual providing of our the training material, what we're trying to teach. We've done our analysis, we've gone through the design phase, and here's what here's what we're trying to accomplish, and the training that we're going to put together in our facilitator guide is going to teach it. So that's the, the first and probably the main reason for a facilitator guide. But I don't discount the other three. The other one is I like my facilitator guide to make sure I'm building consistently, I'm creating an instructionally sound manner in which to deliver the information. So it's going to be giving us the material, we're going to provide it consistently, we're going to have sound instructional design behind it. I'm also going to use my facilitator guide as a study guide for my facilitator, for producers in a virtual environment, so that while they're preparing to teach the session or teach the course, that they have all the materials of what they need beforehand. And in a moment, I'm going to show you kind of a little layout of the way I set that up and not just talk about it. And the last thing is I like my facilitator guides to be a repository for everything that could happen in the training course. So if I'm looking at, I always like to make visuals. And so I picture every one of my trainings as a book on my library, on my shelf. So I want to be able to go up and I want to be able to take off the crafting killer facilitator guides training or customer service 101 and open that up and be able to have access to every item that I could possibly need to teach or go over. So in terms of, we'll delve a little bit into each one of these. So providing training content, like I said, this is the meat and potatoes of our guidebook. It's all the materials we want to teach. And as we get into some of the later sessions of this, we'll dig into those deeper. The idea of ensuring consistent or instructionally sound delivery, it's basically, we want to have detailed and scripted instructions in our facilitator guide. I know people right now are already having some, well, it doesn't need to be detailed, and I'm going to address that in just a moment. But so in addition to having detailed and scripted instructions in our book, we want to make sure, and the reason why we're doing this is we want to make sure that no matter who's leading the course, the same material is going to be delivered or is available to be delivered, no matter who's being taught, where it's being taught. And setting up or building a guidebook in a manner that allows that to happen will make it so that you're going to be more successful. I give this example, and Rosa told you, we're a small family business. We've been actually in the training and development world as a business for probably over 40 years. 25 years of that, we've actually been helping people through tools build better training materials. And so one of the things I see a lot, and I probably see on average 50 to 60 different facilitator or participant guides a month when I'm helping all our clients. But one item I see so much is people writing, they'll have something in their guidebook of explain the 6 steps of the XYZ process, or what are the 7 most important steps in understanding customer relations, or whatever the item. And they'll give that, explain these 6 steps. And then there's nothing. So if I'm teaching it, I may know 5. And if Sue's in Indiana, she may know 4. And Jim down in Louisiana, he knows 1. So how do we make sure, if we're setting up our facilitator guides this way, how do we make sure that everyone gets taught the same way if not all the information's in there? And one of the things we see is, I'll have people come back and they'll say, well, I don't need detailed instructions because, I'm the one teaching it, or I don't want to step on the toes of my seasoned facilitators. And I understand both of those. And obviously navigating personal relationships or feelings is always a hard, or it can be a difficult process. But my arguments to those 2 main points is, one is, as facilitators, as trainers, our job is to make sure that we're presenting the information that's being taught in the best possible way. So I always think our main client is the actual training material. It's not we need to pay attention to our audience, and they're just as important, but not, they're no more important than the actual training material. The other one is people get sick. People leave people leave, people get promoted. So that season facilitator may not be there. You know, everything may be set up to be taught, you know, on Monday, and you get that call Sunday night that they're not coming in. So, well, the next person in line's got to step up. So they're going to have to be able, you know, go in and be able to teach the material. Is it going to be the same experience? No, because obviously that seasoned facilitator has done it more often. They're just more comfortable with it. You know, as we do more and more sessions virtually, everyone gets more comfortable with them. But the next one I do on this one will be better than the one I'm currently doing, just because I'm more comfortable with it. So that's another reason. The other one, you know, and I use the analogy of, think of a restaurant. If you're talking about a long-term success, if we go to a restaurant and they're creating food, but they don't use recipes, how do you ensure the chicken parm that you got today is going to be the same that you get next time? And the reason restaurants are successful restaurants stay, is because they have consistency of food. So we need to do the same in our training. And that's just making sure we set ourselves up for success. And lastly, I don't know how many of you people how many are independents, meaning like you're building trainings and you're going and teaching them on the road and make your money that way. For those, I say even more important to have all your information in there, because you can only teach so much in any given month, any given week, any given year. But if you can build that, and now I know you guys are building amazing stuff. So if we can sell someone or have someone else start teaching your material, and now you're getting a cut, you know, you're not making the full amount, but you're now making more money than you were, and you're not doing anything else other than building the original material and teaching them the first time or several times. You're gonna see the benefits of having more, or your instructional materials created more consistently. And then in terms of the last item, that repository for the training course, you know, it's that we're going to talk about that more, but we're really going to look at, I like to consider it efficiency in motion. So how many steps can we go from from our beginning point to where we need to be at the end in the least amount of steps? And if we build everything into one document, it's going to help us get all the other pieces. And when we dig into our strategies, we're going to talk more about that. So at this moment, I don't see any questions. And I think Rosa had put in the other great reason of why it's important to have everything out there is, yes, people do forget. You know, I'm the best example of that. So, you know, just having something in a place in one manner will make it a lot easier. So when we start digging into the different components of what I think makes a good facilitator guide, and if you've opened up your that participant book, you'll notice I've given you a key points content chunk where I talked about what I consider the three. Our slide's showing the first one, but the three important pieces I think are going to be your admin materials or your administration materials, the study guide material that we just, you know, high level talked about, and then the actual training material. So looking at the admin materials, the way I break this out is I think we're going to have, really it's short, but this is going to be your cover page. It's going to be where you have the course name. It's going to have where you get your branding. This whole section doesn't need to be long. You're probably looking 1 to 2 pages at most. But in there, you know, in addition to the cover page and your branding, really I'd look at the second page really to have what I would call your acknowledgements. So who do you want to thank to help you? Maybe your subject matter experts, the stakeholders that did it. Also, you know, in most places, there's legal notices, there's compliance notices with your corporation. This is where you can get that information in, so it's in there, so you can meet your I guess your legal and compliance notices. Copyright. Everything you guys everything that everyone's building should be copyrighted. So getting it up into the administration materials is where I do it, and then I actually carry it throughout my headers and footers in the documents. I also use my headers and footers to help out with the branding, and I'm going to pull over in just a moment an example. The last item that I like and I think is very important within the administration's items is your course ID. So this would, think of it like an alphanumeric coding. If you use LMSs, your LMS probably is going to be giving you some sort of ID. Why I think it's very important is I use it for course versioning or course history. So especially if we're working in an environment that is, you know, audited, you could you could get brought in front of or somebody could get brought in front of a series of regulators. Having the ability to say, here's what we were teaching and how we were teaching in July of 2020 is important, or how we were teaching in December of 2019. And your course ID is one of the easiest ways to keep track of that. So every time I make an update to a course that because of regulation changes or things like that, I change my course ID. But I'm going to pull over from my other monitor. So let me just shoot this over real quick. I'm just going to bring over, this is actually the upfront of the facilitator guide I built out for this course. So in some of the items that I'll put, and actually let me jump up a couple pages. So cover page, because it was just me looking at it, I didn't really make it look that fancy. And on this one, because I'm teaching virtually, or we're doing this virtually, I made it landscape because it fills out my monitor better, so it meant less scrolling as we're going through this course. But if I come down a page, so here's really that administration page, that the way I set it up. So, you know, here's the acknowledgements, and then items about trademarks and copyrights, and then how I would put in some more of the branding, the copyrights, the revision, the name of the course. So can be very simple, and you know, I wouldn't worry about too much. Just make sure you hit those high-level points, and you'll find success. All right, so let me come back and change those around. Okay, so the next area that we really get into is going to be how we use our facilitator guide to help us get to prepare for teaching the course. So what I call the study guide material. So we look at, one is setting up the document for, you know, letting the facilitator know, letting the producer know what to expect, how the document's laid out. And that's what I call really the instructions for the guide. So I'm going to bring that what I had open in just a moment back so you could see it. I would also, in the study guide materials, put our high-level learning objectives. So these would be what I would put at the level of our terminal objectives. So the main points that we're using to teach to the overall goal of why we're having this course. The next one down is I would put in, you know, the why. Why are we doing this course? So this really ties us back into our design documents and the analysis that was done to why, you know, what's the issue that needs to be resolved, or why are we holding this training? Is it into, you know, improve or to lessen customer turnover? Is it to increase sales? Is it to, you know, build better attitudes throughout the company? Whatever that is, but the why is really, this is the reason why we're doing this course. So one, to have the facilitator know the thoughts behind it. And then this would actually, to jump into the next level, this is also important to the participants. So in our next session, we'll cover, you know, how we're bringing some of these items from here over to a participant guide. But the why is extremely important. I also put into the courses, you know, what pre-work, what preparation needs to be done. So is there pre-work that the participants need to do? Is it, you know, attend a different training, go through a series of e-learnings, some readings, any of that information? Because again, this is a repository of information. So pulling off this document, they should be able to see exactly what needs to be done or have been done prior to getting to this course. I would call for materials needed, here's the laundry list of everything that we possibly would need to teach this course. You know, for this session, obviously it's, you know, a Zoom account, a PowerPoint, and a computer. But, you know, for a face-to-face classroom that's going over 3 weeks, you know, here's the list to make sure you have everything you could possibly need. We would also give you a place for a room setup or a virtual setup. So in the face-to-face environment, maybe it's an image of how you want the desks arranged. In a virtual setup, maybe it's how you're going to use the different breakout rooms. So, or if you're in Adobe Connect, the pods, and you know, we use this template when we go into this pod or those things. And then also give you any instructor or producer instructions or prep work that they need to do beforehand. That's a very big one, I think, especially when you come into the virtual world, for laying out exactly what you expect for the producers to be doing during these sessions. So I'm going to show you those in just a moment. And then we're going to come back to the visual cue legend after I show you just a sample from my existing facilitator guide. So let me just send this back over. So within the facilitator guide, table of contents, which we're going to talk about in a few moments, but here's kind of how we set up, and we've been setting up for years, our upfront study guide material. So we kind of give you this about this guide. So what's the purpose? What can the facilitator or producer expect to find in the guide? How's it organized? And then just, you know, giving him an example how text is laid out. Here's giving them a visual cue of what they can kind of expect and how the overall look and feel of the document would be. And then this is the visual cue legend. And so let me just, at this point, go back to my PowerPoint because it'll probably be bigger. Oh, and I just came out of slideshow mode, didn't I? I apologize. All right, are you guys seeing that again now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Technology and me some days just don't get along. All right. So in terms of the visual cues, I'm giving you, here's 2 different examples of ways to do this. So one of the items that we're very strongly believe in is providing visual cues or graphic cues to your facilitators. And there's the main point behind this is your brain processes images a lot differently than it processes words, and you can do it quicker. So this is why when you're driving down the road, you have a red light and a green light and the yellow light, because your brain can process those differently than if you had words that popped up and said drive or stop or slow down. The image itself, your brain can quickly process, and it actually processes in a different location than your brain processes words. So when we're looking at a facilitator guide, they can see a visual cue for the different item that they're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about these more, and we're going to come back to this slide in a little bit. But the visual cue is another item that we give in our study guide material, just so your facilitators and producers can be aware of, here's the possible icons, what they are or what they could see and what they each mean. All right, and then the last section of kind of the key components is really the actual training materials. And so the way I look at these is I put my table of contents as actually a key part of my training materials, because I look at, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, is the table of contents is my whole outline for teaching. So I'd be able to go through and from my table or from an outline build out a table of contents. After that, we're looking at really our modules and lessons. Now you may use different terminologies. It could be topics and subtopics. But the way I consider it, modules is at the same level as a terminal objective. Lessons are at the same level as our enabling objective. Underneath that, we then start chunking our materials out. So if our lessons are where the actual teaching is happening, our content chunks is how we break out the material. And the content chunks are tied to our icons. But this is where we would say, say this, do this, run this activity, here's this key point. And so that's why we start chunking the material out to make it easier for you to deliver. And then other things I think are important to include there is time cues. This could either be at the module level, it could be at the lesson level, or it could be all the way down at a specific activity level. So for face-to-face classroom learning, I actually like to go time at the lesson level, and then underneath that, so let's say if I was teaching a lesson and let's say it was going to be 10 minutes, but we were also going to run an activity. Let's say it was going to be an introduction name game type activity. I may give a time cue for specific activity, say, all right, we're 10 minutes for the overall lesson, but only spend 5 minutes on this activity. Because we all know activities, role plays, question and answers, this is where we get off track. So by providing a time cue on those activities, it can help make sure the facilitator stays on track. For virtual, I almost think time cues become on the individual level or individual content block is more important, because we are really tied to a very short period of time that we got to get through a lot of material. So making sure we have the, spend a minute here, spend 3 minutes here, spend 2 minutes here, really helps that facilitator and producer make sure that they can maneuver their way through all the material. So I put also within training materials, I put goals. So I know this ties back to the learning objective that I had up for the study guide material, but in terms of the training materials, I look at our goals, really goals for the specific lesson. So what's our goal for the enabling objective, or what's our enabling objective for that lesson that's teaching to our overall module, which is our terminal objective, which is then teaching up to the overall goal for the course. So I think it's really important to make sure that we're staying on track, that you kind of at least keep that in mind as you're building out your facilitator guide. And lastly, the participant guide references. So if we are providing a participant guide and you want the facilitator to be directing people to parts of the facilitator or to parts of the participant guide, we want to make it easy for them. So give them references within their facilitator guide that will direct them to specific pages in the participant guide to make it easy. And I've built an example into this later on in the session. All right, so at this point, and obviously I've been talking nonstop, but does anyone have any questions or anything you want me to cover some more? All right. Okay, so now let's start really digging into the whole strategies to help you build out better guides. And so these 5, well, the top 4 I think are key ones to always keep in mind. The 5th one is one that I think should have an underlying, you should always kind of just keep it in the back of your mind. But step 1, always have your end result as the first, top of mind. So begin with the end in mind. So if we know what we're trying to accomplish, we want to know, who's our audience? What are our objectives? What are we teaching? Are we teaching knowledge items? Are we looking to build skills? Are we building attitude? Having those in the forefront of our mind, which is the end result of our training, is going to help us when we start developing. I would also know at the end, what are we eventually looking for? Are we going to need a facilitator guide? Do we need a participant guide? What about PowerPoint slides? Or are we doing assessments, case studies, handouts, any of these items? Knowing the end, the final item really actually helps us in the beginning figure out the best way to navigate from the start to the end. So I talk about this a lot. I talk about efficiency in motion. How can we get from this point to this point with the least amount of steps, or taking advantage of the most amount of items along that way? So building off that, once we have the final destination, we really need to dig into what are we starting from? So do we have any source materials to work with? Is there a PowerPoint deck with some notes in there? Is there an existing Word file or an existing leader guide or facilitator guide that we're going to be building, we're going to be redoing? Are we truly starting from scratch? once we have the end goal and then know where we're going to be starting from, it can really help us truly chart the way to navigate to get from point A to point B in the least amount of steps. All right, in regards to that starting from scratch, one item that really stuck with me when I first started in this industry was someone had told me is the worst position to ever start from is a blank page. And I've really taken that to heart throughout my years. So unless you're really coming from a place that are coming from starting at a company that has no training materials at all, you're more than likely already sitting on a treasure trove of repurposable or reusable learning objects. So different materials that people have already used, their knowledge, their expertise that's already out there. Is it outdated? Probably. Are there items that look bad or no longer apply? Absolutely. But there's still gems within that material. So always take a look at any prior materials that have been built based off of what's already out there, because this is really going to help you cut down. The one side note I always add, if you are starting to repurpose items, it's not a cut and paste. You are going to have to make edits. You're going to have to match the audience, the voice of the audience. You're going to have to update items like regulations. The PowerPoint images, they're awful. We know it. They're 90s clip art. Change those out. But there are gems. So don't be afraid to dig into what's out there. Get your hands dirty. The other item that we would have is, we're looking at building materials for consistency and efficiency. So this is how do we set ourselves up, whether it's templates, whether it's the icons that we're using, that we can consistently build materials the same way. As we do things more and more often, whether it's doing webinars, whether it's mowing the lawn, whether it's cooking dinner, any of these items, the more we get hands-on repetition, the better we get, the easier it gets for us. So we need to build our training materials with that same idea in place. So set yourself up with items that will be able to make it so you can build it efficiently. It also becomes that consistent look makes it easier for your facilitators to teach because they know what that icon means. They know where to look on how the room's supposed to be set up. So building stuff, in the same manner is going to make it a lot easier. It also takes your time away from worrying about formatting so much. And you can now spend more time in what actually matters is the building of your training materials. So the last one is use the right tools. So first thing I'm always going to say about this is don't discount what you already have. So don't say, I only have Microsoft Word, or I have access to Canva, or I have LeaderGuide Pro, or I have PowerPoint. Those tools, every tool that's out there offers many options that are great in many situations. So take a look at what you have. What I would then look at is what that vision of what that end result is. Can the tool that you currently have get you there? If it can, great. If it can't, what is that difference? So that once we have an idea of, knowing where we want to go and knowing that tool, what our tool can possibly do for us, can then help us make the decision of, does it make sense to get something else? Can you justify that budgetary expense to get that next tool? Or is where you can get with what you currently have close enough to your end result? That being said, I love tools. And I'm going to give you an example. So whenever I can talk about tools, I will, whether it's bandsaws, whether it's hand tools, hammers, spatulas. I love gadgets and tools. So the one example I like to always talk about when I'm talking about tools is if you ever had to build a fence. For those who haven't, I'm jealous because building a fence can be daunting, but it really is a simple process. It all comes down to one item or one major item. It's your fence post holes. So in terms of building out fence posts or building out a fence, there's really 4 tools that we can use to build a fence. 3 of them are effective. 1 of them you're going to quit right away. So we're going to start with that one. So if we're ever going to build a fence, if you had to dig those holes, first choice, you could use your hands. I'll tell you right now, you'll get about 15 seconds into it and you're going to quit. No one's digging a fence post with their hands, especially in New England where you got to drop 3 feet to get into the ground or to get below the frost line. So second option would be to use a shovel. So we can dig down. Let's say we got to go 3 feet down. If you dig with a shovel, you got to dig to get that deep. You got to dig wider. So using a low cost of entry tool, you're going to end up being able to get it done, but you're going to be digging a much deeper hole that has to be, or a much wider hole to get as deep as you need to be. So you can get the 3 feet down, but you probably dug 2 feet wide. So now you spent more time getting the hole deep enough, and you spend more time building it out. So sometimes that low cost of entry tool gets the job done, but not as efficiently. Third option is a post hole digger. So it's like two shovels together, you push it down and you're able to pull it up. So with a good bit of sweat equity, you can get to the proper depth, fairly, the hole that's right about the right size for your post hole or for your fence post. And you can get it in and you fill it in. So it does it quicker. It is a lot more efficient, but it's like a one-trick pony. That doesn't do a lot of other things. Your fourth option is really that power tool. You get that power auger, maybe 1 person, 2 people. So it will quickly do what you need to do, but there's training that needs to happen so you know how to use it, so you don't cut your foot off, those type of things. So I like tools, and I'll talk about them any day, but I think it's a great example of, think about the different tools you could possibly be doing to build out your training. So for facilitator guides, Canva, Word, Leader Guide Pro, PowerPoint, anything like that. E-learnings, you have Camtasia, you have Storyline, all those different things. Every tool has its purpose. It's finding the right ones for you. So once we've actually started building out our facilitator guide, where I actually like to start, and I know I just brought up why'd you just show me a table of contents? To me, the table of contents is my outline. So I like to build my outline first. So take yourself back to high school history class or high school English class. Roman numeral 1 is your first main concept. Underneath that, capital A, is your next is the next step down, and so on. So my Roman numerals, those are my modules. So on the slide that you're looking at, Crafting Killer Facilitator Guides is the module. And then underneath that, welcome, purpose, key components, strategies, those are my lessons. If I was to go down another level within here, and you don't see it in here, but that becomes my content blocks. So I'm building out my outline. From there, I'm trying to, at this point, I'm trying to take all the different ideas of how I should be teaching this, and hopefully you have a design document that will make this process easier. But if not, how do we take all these items that I've put down into my outline and now arrange them in a logical flow for teaching, a logical flow for learning? We get those into place, and now off that outline, let's start fleshing it out. So we're going to put the meat on the bones of the outline. So at this point, still don't worry about formatting. The goal at this point is just to get the information onto the paper or onto the monitor. So, spend the time building the training materials. In our 25 years of helping people build training materials, we see probably about 50% of time is wasted on formatting. What font should it look like? How do I center this? Do I do a right justify? Do I do a left justify? And I shouldn't say wasted, because it is important information. You do need to do that. But setting yourself up in a way that you'll be able to build this out quicker and spend less time worrying about formatting and more time on the materials. And when I get to do another session, we can dig in and actually start working on this in an actual let's say within Word, one of the things I look at, so consider this, if you're using Word or any of the other programs that allow this, when you're in the actual building of your materials, you really only need 4 main styles of text. You would need a body text, so the general information that, everyday information. You need a headline text, so how you want something to stand out. You need bullets, you need numbers. That's it. Those are obviously you can do more. I'm not saying to not do more, but by having those 4 base items, later on you can set your styles to say my body text is going to be Calibri 11-point black and italicized, or my headline text is Algerian and it's 14-point and it's orange and it's underlined and it's bold. You get to set all those items, and you can quickly go through your entire document and just make the changes instead of you manually highlighting something, going over to the home tab, dropping down, choosing your font, selecting it, and moving on. So when we're fleshing out our outline, just worry about the materials. Worry about the formatting later on. All right. So after that, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on this slide for a while, but we're going to be looking at, and this is the way I like to do it, when we start chunking our material out. So after we've put our flesh on the bone, we're going to start building into breaking the material out into different content chunks. So if I'm going to give myself a little arrow here so you can see. So that arrow, so the way we set this up, if we think of these as, let's think of this like a table. So column 1, column 2, column 3. Column 1 is our visual cues. So that little icon for me means it's the participant workbook. So at this stage, I'd be directing your participants to their workbook. And so I have visual cue, then I have my headline. So here is information to be delivered. And then underneath that, the body text, here's the training information. Now, because this is a session, there wasn't a lot to do or a lot to say about going to the participant workbook. It was really just an example. Those two, my headline and my body text, really say about the same thing. In this layout, I've also given myself, on the third column, I've given myself the look or a notes column. So if there's items that I wanted to talk to specifically to the facilitator, I could put that in the third column. And we're going to dig into that in just a moment. But so as I'm breaking these materials out, I'm thinking of, is this a say block? Is this something I want them to say? Is this an activity? Is it a key point? Is it a tool? Is it, is it a lab? What chunks do you need, and how do we break this out? So the chunks make it easier for your facilitator to see what's going on. I can quickly look down at a facilitator guide, see a visual cue. I see the microphone. I know this is something I need to say. I can get the headline and then quickly see what it is, and then be back up in front of the audience engaging with them. The third block, if I did this right, I should have broke this one out into more of a bulleted list or items like that, so it was easier to do, and it takes away the idea of reading from this. So as you notice, I really love analogies. I think of my facilitator guide as a book of music. So think of this like if I was a violinist. You see the orchestra once we're able to go back out of our houses. But you go see the orchestra. That violinist who's been playing this music for 20 years, the William Tell Overture, they're still, as they're going, they have the sheet music in front of them, and they turn the page. It's not necessarily that they need it, but in case they do, it's there. They have it as a reference. And so that's what this facilitator guide is. So the more we can break stuff up, chunk it, spread it across the page, the easier it is for them to look down and see where they need to be, and then be back up in front of the audience. And because if you're not engaged, if I was to sit here and read, from in front of me the entire time and not pay attention to you, you're quickly going to be going elsewhere. The other item, and we talked about audience a little bit before, and I'm going to jump back here to our visual cues. So I like, and I think this is a key point to do at some point, early on in your process, if you start going the visual cue route. take your chunks and start looking at them as which audience do they talk to? So for me, as an example, I look at, is it a facilitator? Is my audience just the facilitator? Is it just the participant? Or is it both the facilitator and the participant? So as an example, like if I was to say, like for me, I use the say block or the say this block as strictly for facilitator, where if there's something I want to be for the facilitator as well as for the participant, I would use it as a key point. So this would allow me to say, where's key point? I'm missing it right there, key point. So I'm able to break up my material in a way that works for which audience. One, it's going to help me, if I'm using my facilitator guide as that repository of information, I can now start saying when I go from a facilitator guide and I need to build a participant book, I know, all right, everything I've labeled as key points, I need to pull from this document and put into that document. Or activities is both facilitator as well as participant. I can pull that over. But I'd say even more importantly, is if I know the audience that the chunk is for, I can write the material that's in there for that audience. So when I write for the say block that's just for the facilitator, I can write it in a way that works just for the facilitator. But if I'm writing something that's going to go for both the facilitator as well as the participant, I can write it in a way that works for both audiences. So when I do extract it or do pull it over into the participant book, I don't have to rework it. It's already set up for that, for that audience. And I'm going to jump back here to this one and come over here. So that third column, so in a place where I have instructions that are written for both audiences, that third column I use is a great way to give supplemental information to the facilitator that they may need to help with delivering the information to the left of them, but it's not necessarily something that they have to say, but it's one of the best examples I use for this is, let's say I had a question and answer block, and it was, I asked, what's the best way to do X, Y, Z? And I could give a note over on the right-hand side for listen for. And here's the 4 or 5 items that the participants should be saying. And if I don't hear it, that I can now circle back because they missed something. So that's where, breaking the information up into different pieces will help you out, especially in facilitating a group. All right, so let's continue on. The other item on here is going to be these headlines. So for say blocks, could be say something, I use say something like, if it's not something I need the facilitator to read verbatim, here's the idea, here's the gist, you get it across in the best manner. But if, let's say I use the word say or say exactly, maybe this is something from compliance that needs to be read exactly as is. So that comes in. But also use the same type of headlines for consistently. So as an example, if it's a key point, use the term key point. One is it makes it easier, it's easier for the facilitator when they're going through, they see key point, they know it's what to do. But it'll become more apparent too when you start using headlines within Word or in other documents, you can search for specific headlines. And as an example, in Microsoft Word, you can search within the navigation pane for, let's say, key points. And it would show you every location in the document that shows up. And then you can actually navigate between them. So it makes it easy when you need to start pulling from one document to the other. But when we do our next session on that, or if you guys want to meet up before that individually, I can show you that in practice. Last item on this page is we're going to go back to what we talked about, page references. So if anyone right now has opened their participant workbook that was available in the chat, if you went to page 14 in that, so not page 14 of the actual PDF, but page like the numerical page 14 in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll notice that there's page 14 is the subsequent participant workbook block from that participant guide. And Jeff, I'll resend that before this is over, so you can get the workbook. But on here, if you pull a page number reference from your workbook and put it into your facilitator guide, it makes it easy for when your facilitators are talking and let's say there's a case study that they need to go, you're going to be going over, and that's in your participant book. Giving them the reference, they can say, all right, everyone, go to your participant workbook to page 14 for XYZ, and they're not searching for it. I know we're coming up on the hour, so I'm actually going to use my little note here to skip because we're coming over. But just think about the times that you're going to, if someone had to be searching through a guidebook to find a page that they need to come to, and how you can lose engagement from that. But spending a couple moments and getting the page numbers for when they need to direct them is going to make your facilitator's life a lot easier, and it's going to become a better learning environment or engaging environment for the learners. All right, so basically to recap everything here, what I'd like you to do when you're thinking about this, always be strategic. Every step you take should have purpose, and it should be moving you efficiently to your end goal of what you need. When we're looking at creating, look at creating your outline, build off that outline, and then onto that, what you're building off, break it into chunks. And then when you have the chance, not that there isn't anything else going on in your life between, staying at home and family and all that stuff and work and everything, take some time, learn the tools that you have, figure out what's working for you, what can get you to where you needed to go, what pieces are missing. And from there, you're going to be able to build a better experience for you, which then builds a better experience for your learners and your facilitator. And lastly, and you have this in the workbook, which I'm going to put up right now, Jeff, so you can have that. Wrong one. Here's my contact information. So make sure, please send me any emails that you may have. If I gave you my phone number, I'm not afraid for you to give me a call. I'll answer a phone call before I answer an email. I may not be the norm in that, but that's me. And then, please link up with me on LinkedIn. And my last offer to you before this goes is, I told you we're a small family business. We've been building out tools to help people build training materials for years. For everyone who attended today, if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to give you 1 month access to our program, Leader Guide Pro complimentary. So you guys can try it out, see if it's something that you would be interested in. That is my one shameless plug for the company. But if that doesn't work for you, if you just want to talk strategy, how can I do this within Word? Please reach out to me. I'm happy to do it. And at that point, let's open it up for questions. So please feel, if you want to unmute and just start yelling at me that this was awful, you can do that too.
I can also unmute everyone. I just shared your link to your organization as well.
Thank you,
and you're welcome. And guys, I will tell you that when he says he prefers the phone, he does. We've chatted quite a few times. I am a very, very happy Great Circle Learning Leader Guide Pro customer. And I love it. We have taken several programs and created a facilitator guide that we now have given to our SMEs, because there's the hands-on learning that has to happen after we after we do the classroom piece. And so we want that consistency to continue with that hands-on learning, those things that we want that SME to cover with that new person. And to be able to have the consistency, these facilitator guides are really the key to that, right? For us anyway. So we have found that our folks appreciate the fact that we've given them kind of a roadmap of this is what you do, this is what we've covered, like that background of this was done in the class, you're going to cover this piece, this is what you should say, do, etc. All of that, they love that piece. So I'm a happy customer who can say that it has made a difference in our new hire onboarding and provided a good tool for our subject matter experts who are then, continuing to onboard these people. So take him up on the offer. It's always great to chat with Pat. I don't see any questions here for you. But again, guys, he's given you the info, and reach out to him. I'm happy to also, answer questions if you reach out to me. We will be sending a recap of this and the recording within a day or two. And for those of you that are members, it will be on the members only section of the website once we send it out as well. Just wanted to remind you all that we're always looking for folks to join us and volunteer so that we can continue to add great programming for you. And, just to do the work that happens behind the scenes of being part of ATD Central Florida. So if you're interested, go to the website and check us out. And then also always share and tag us in your social media and follow us. So I hope that this was a great benefit to you all. Pat, thank you so much. And I am definitely going to be contacting you for that part 2, which just from this session, I think may be a part 2, 3, or 4 based on—
as many as it takes.
Based on all the different things that you were discussing. So this could be a series